Hello, friends. It's Chapo in March 2012. He became the first person in history to descend the 6.8-mile distance solo, and only one of a few people to ever go that deep. Since then, others have followed, most prominently a private equity titan and former Naval Reserve intelligence officer turned explorer named Victor Vescovo. But Cameron is adamant that none have surpassed him. Vescovo, Cameron told me, claimed he went deeper, but you can't. So basically, he's just making shit up. And what I love about this article is that going through it, like, you really do get the sense that, like, James Cameron is everything Elon Musk, like, caps about being.
Yep.
Like, he is generally a guy who has mastered, like, every aspect of, like, the filmmaking process and pushes himself and, like, genuinely pushes his creative vision and brings humanity along with him. Is that, like, if the light of consciousness will be preserved in the stars, it's going to be James fucking Cameron that does it, not this fucking idiotic reply guy and his fake companies.
Yeah. I think the word visionary is like, I mean, there's a lot of words that have been treated really bad over the last, whatever, half a decade. That one, getting that applied to, like, seeing Musk described as a visionary to me when he seems just, like, pathologically incurious and boring. Like, Cameron as a visionary, like, it's so legitimately a visionary that I don't understand where he gets his shit. Like, there was a bit from, like, this was from an old interview where I was like, it wasn't Aliens. It was like something that maybe it was The Abyss, where he was like, yeah, like, I was taking Molly and listening to Sting's Fields of Gold, and then it just came to me and stuff. And it's like, the whole process is so fucking borked and weird and distinctively him that I was like, yeah, I guess that's where you would get your ideas. Like, but I can't say that that's wrong. Like, he's always fucking right. Like, I think Matt posted, I don't know if you've said this on the show or if you posted it about him. I'm like, but you were just like, he sees further than you, which he does. Like, that's
you have to just accept that.
Right. So tip your cap. Like, that's like, I don't need to understand the process that created Avatar. It seemed pretty silly to me personally, but I'm a fucking idiot. Like, and he's James Cameron. So, like, my opinion should not be valid there.
Well, this article does talk about his vision board that's in his head. Writes here, Cameron has a rich dream life to this day. He told me, I have my own private streaming service that's better than any of that shit out there, and it runs every night for free.
Hell yeah.
And he says, Avatar 2 originally came to Cameron while he was asleep. I woke up after dreaming of this kind of bioluminescent forest with these trees that kind of looked like fiber optic lamps and this river that was glowing bioluminescent particles and kind of a purple moss on the ground that lit up when you walked on it. All these kinds of lizards that didn't look much like, that don't look like much until they took off. And then they turned into these rotating fans, kind of like living frisbees. And they come down and land on something. It was all in the dream. I woke up super excited and I actually drew it. So I actually have a drawing. It saved us from about 10 lawsuits. Any successful film, there's always some freak with tinfoil under their wig that thinks you've beamed the idea out of their head. And it turned out there were 10 or 11 of them. So I pointed to this drawing I did when I was 19, when I was going to Fullerton Junior College, and said, see this? See those glowing trees? See this glowing lizard that spins around? That's orange. See the purple moss? And everybody went away. So he's winning lawsuits with doodles he did when he was 19 that just said, no, Avatar, that whole world, it came exactly out of every single one of my brain cells and nothing else.
God, I don't know. I think that I think I'd like to see a $1 billion film inspired by Patriot.biz memes.
Yep.
I think Elon should really try to get into the dream weaving world like Cameron and use lifted memes to just like do a collage.
It's gonna make
$1 billion on it.
$1 billion honestly literalizing Drill's Skeleton Wars tweet and then claiming it as his own.
That would be awesome. That would be. I would honestly argue that would be pretty based. Pretty fucking based.
I mean, like Matt, you've talked before about Cameron as like a Napoleon and someone who should be like a global dictator. Here's another evidence for that. He says, Cameron is proud to work at the biggest scale possible. Terminator 2, Judgment Day, True Lies, and Titanic were all among the most expensive films ever made at their time of release. And I used to be really defensive about that because it was always the first thing anybody would mention, Cameron said. And now I'm like, if I can make a business case to spend $1 billion on a movie, I will fucking do it. Do you want to know why? Because we don't put it all in a pile and light it on fire. We give it to people. Dude, the guy... If there's anyone who should be given $1 billion to like pursue a project of just whatever is on his mind. It's fucking James Cameron.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Tesla just rolled out their new like self-driving AI this morning, and it caused like a 6-car pileup on the Bay Bridge that backed up traffic for like 6 months now. They're going to be clearing that shit out. Oh, by the way, speaking of obnoxious reply guys, did you see Tim Pool's reply to Elon about the self-driving car? Where he was like,
fantastic.
"Wonderful car, sir. I'm a little concerned by the fact that it keeps braking randomly on the highway."
There's
And by
so many
braking,
of
I mean,
those.
But
like,
it's
you know,
still
like
very
decelerating.
good.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
excellent.
That's such the like Tesla owner, like they have to just sort of like preemptively like prostrate themselves before they're like, sir, like I can't tell you what an honor it is to be driving this car. However, I am trapped in it right now. It is on fire and extremely hot. Please release the locks. But if you don't begin with the sort of like, it's been like, if this is how I go, it's been the great honor of my life to die at your hand, sir. Like then he won't acknowledge it somehow. The whole Tesla, I've been fascinated by the Tesla hardcore, like the ultras, the subculture of it. There's a guy, I think my favorite Twitter name is a guy named, goes by @JeffTutorials, who's
Yes.
become, like all of these guys has become a reactionary, like it's what happens. But initially it was just like Tesla tricks from a guy that really loves them, and so it would just sort of be like, are you tired of your like car like trying to drive under a school bus? Like there's an easy hack for that actually. You just need to like, you'll need a soldering iron, but like here's how you do it. Those guys are inspirational to me. Like, and I do feel like whatever, if Cameron had an army of like weird followers like that, the world would probably be kinder, and at the very least they'd be supplicating themselves in the right direction.
I mean, he's got one. He's got one
Yes.
in me. If he has,
I like the tone of his quotes. You're really capturing this.
Yeah.
That he's like, even these like super friendly questions for the profile where he's sort of like, well, I'll fucking tell you why that is, actually.
No, he's not shying away at all. Just another thing, it says, Cameron, in his nearly 40 years of filmmaking, has earned a reputation for having a temper. Some would say he's earned the reputation several times over. On more than one Cameron set, crew members have taken to wearing shirts that read, "You can't scare me. I work for Jim Cameron." Cameron is well aware of this. I think there was a period of time early on where that reputation worked in my favor, he told me later, and it took on this Paul Bunyan-esque, slightly larger than life quality. And there was a legitimate time when I looked at like, all right, why am I getting so upset? And what is that solving? I'm not saying I don't get upset once in a while. I mean, everybody I think is entitled to a bad day. But whereas before it might have been once every couple of weeks, now it's like twice a year. Cameron recalled working with Ron Howard, the famously nice director, on the visual effects for Apollo 13. And I just watched what a great guy he was. And I'm like, I'm a total asshole compared to Ron Howard. I have to get in touch with my inner Ron Howard. He probably has bad days too. I don't know. But I didn't see it. And he was so complimentary to people. I always figured that no negative comment was the equivalent of a compliment. That's not how people are wired at all. You actually have to say it out loud.
Radical
He's learning.
kindness
He's learning and
James
growing.
Cameron. Yeah.
He didn't
Yeah,
decide.
give him-
Actually, it's everyone else's problem that I get mad at them, and I'm going to buy a social media site to affirm that.
Yeah. It is kind of inspiring whenever a rich guy has even like a little flicker of insight like that. Like this is a guy that's incredibly, like unassailably successful and wealthy. And the idea that like the insight that it is not always someone else's problem is like, I mean, it's not a remarkable thing. I think that that's like one of the basic baseline observations you have as an adult if you're like going to grow into any kind of person worth being. And yet it is like, for someone of his stature, that is like watching a dog dunk a basketball.
Because the money, I mean, that's what the money does. That's even if you
Yeah.
don't intend it to do that, it makes it so that you can buy off ever having to inwardly reflect on anything, and you can build a world that blames everything on somebody else, and then you can live in that world. You can create that universe, and there's nothing to stop you.
Like, I'll say like a little personal insight here. I will say, I won't say how we gained access to this, but like a year or two ago, Matt and I were given the opportunity to be on a Zoom call with James Cameron, and it was ostensibly like this is what a real one he is. He was answering questions from a high school class who had just studied the Titanic for a semester. And he took like an hour out of his after, an hour from his like Avatar compound in New Zealand to just like fully engage earnestly and just very impressed by these teenagers and had given him like the full measure of himself to just answer questions about the Titanic. And, he had his Fox racing gear on, and he couldn't have been more generous with these kids. He didn't seem like an asshole at all. But the one thing I'll never forget him saying is that one of the kids asked him, Like, why, like, what interested you the most when you started researching the Titanic disaster and like writing this movie? And then like the perfect James Cameron reply, he said, "Well, initially the forensics, but after I really started studying it and the people involved in it, it was really just about like the people and their emotions." But
Incredible.
I just love that. Yeah, the forensics is what got me into the Titanic, and like just how
why
did
did
this
it
boat
crash?
actually break
Yeah,
apart?
Sing,
Like,
what happened?
what happened? And then to achieve that, what did he do? Built a submarine to go film the actual Titanic, sitting at the fucking bottom of the North Atlantic.
That's what I was going to say is so remarkable at it. Like, he really did make himself like he's recognized as one of the world's experts on this particular topic, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like a bullshit thing where you're kind of like, actually also celebrity director James Cameron has studied this very much. It's like the people that actually study it respect the work that he's done, which is
Yeah, he's broken
amazing,
new
especially given
ground.
that, like whatever, stack that up against like, you want to bring Kyrie Irving into it, but the idea of just like like a still image from an episode of Ancient Aliens completely rewiring your brain, and you accept that as correct, as opposed to being like, well, I don't know what happened forensically with this extremely well documented disaster, and I'm going to figure it out, and then you do.
You hear a big thing that's supposed to be a argument against socialism is well, if you don't allow people to pursue their grandest ambitions, then how are you going to have greatness in your society? And you look at a guy like James Cameron, and you're like, well, in any kind of socialist society, he would be able to do something amazing. But what the fuck would Elon Musk or Donald Trump have to contribute if they did not just have their giant hoarded pile of lucre to make reality for them?
It doesn't seem like they want very much. That's always the part of it that's kind of like, I mean, I don't want $1 billion necessarily, but I feel like if I had it, there's things I'd want to do with it. It seems like so many of the people that have it like are just, they're bored, they're miserable, like they just sort of want to like reupholster every couch in their home to make it softer and more welcoming to them. That like, I guess I don't see the lack of ambition there as being like not even comprehensible. Like obviously I don't admire it, but I can't. It doesn't scan in that way.
They're mutants. They've been mutated. Like being around that money, it's like it has the money is like it's got a like a radioactive signature, and you don't even know that you're being exposed to it, and it's literally like destroying your DNA without you even knowing it.
So a few other details from Cameron. He's a big proponent of a vegan plant-based diet, and it goes on to say Cameron even went so far as to try to rebrand the lifestyle. I tried to come up with a good term for it because vegan has all these connotations. How many vegans does it take to screw in a light bulb? It doesn't matter. I'm better than you. You just want to punch a vegan. Punch a vegan today. It'll feel good. So the term I came up with is futurevore. We're eating the way people will eat in the future. We're just doing it early. And I'm like, dude, like he's got it. He's fucking nailed it. Then there's some good stuff about the battles he had with Fox executives over making Avatar, including one who said, "We love it, but could you do without all the hippie tree hugging bullshit?" And he just says, "I'm making this movie because of the tree hugging bullshit, and if you don't want it, then I'm taking it elsewhere." It goes on to say, in the end, Fox did come back, and Cameron made Avatar with the studio. The Way of Water was also a Fox project before the company was bought and subsumed by Disney. But Cameron still remembers an executive at the company who will go unnamed because this is a really negative review, who approached Cameron with a stricken cancer diagnosis expression after a pre-release screening of the film and begged the director to shorten it. I said something I've never said to anybody else in the business, Cameron recalled. He said he told him, "I think this movie is going to make all the fucking money. And when it does, it's going to be too late for you to love the film. The time for you to love the movie is today. So I'm not asking you to say something you don't feel, but just know that I will always know that no matter how complimentary you are about the movie in the future when it makes all the money." And that's exactly what I said in all caps, all the money. Not some of the money, all of the fucking money. I said, you can't come back to me and compliment the film or chum along and say, look what we did together. You won't be able to do that. At that point, that particular studio executive flipped out and went bug shit on me. And I told him to get the fuck out of my office. And that's where it was left. Just his God status cannot be denied.
Yeah. Just earnestly being like that. Like that's such a, if anybody wrote that speech for a character, it would be overstated. And it would be written in like some sort of like Sorkin-y hammer, on a nail sort of way. I just feel like that's probably the way that James Cameron talks like half the time that he's talking.
And just the confidence to call his shot like that, because like
Yeah.
I don't know, I could totally imagine. I mean, like, and I love Cameron, but I could totally imagine being that studio executive and seeing a 3.5 hour movie about like blue cat people and the Earth
Right,
tree,
space
and
cats.
just being like, ooh, I don't know if this is gonna pan out, But he's like, no, either you get on board now and you love the movie, or you will be written out of the book of life when it makes all of the money.
Right.
Just like I'd be like, just to bring the hammer down that hard on a studio executive, to be like, and also like just getting exactly who these people are. You'd be like, okay, look, when it's successful, I don't want to hear a bar of you coming along and saying, look at all this great work we did together. The time for you to love the movie is now. And you must love the movie without a second's worth of difference between what you just saw and what will be in the theater.
It's pretty devastating because I think he knows, certainly from this point in his career, that like that guy is going to have to come back to him and be like, Jim, baby, like really looking forward to giving you somehow more money to make the next version of the fucking Space Cats movie, and it's all underwater this time. Like he has to come back. He knows. And so like taking advantage of that leverage in the moment before you've released your 3.5 hour Space Cat environmental opus is like to describe it as a flex does not begin, I think, to really
Yeah.
cover it.
So like the last part of the article talks about basically he had after he made Avatar and went to the deepest part of the ocean for the first human being ever to do that, he had an ambition to make a documentary in space that would require him being on the International Space Station. And it just says here, Cameron thought about it. He said to himself, maybe everything I've been doing over the last few years leads to this exact moment where the administrator of NASA is willing to make a solid deal to fly me to space on the space shuttle. But he looked in his heart and decided no. He would only go to space on his own terms. I've said, I've got to say no. I want to stick to my plan, even if it can't happen, even if it ultimately gets derailed. First of all, there was a long pause, and Dan looks over me and he says, now, I know you're serious. I said, damn right I'm serious. Golden let him in line to go to the ISS. Cameron went to Houston and started training. He began mapping out the logistics of his shoot. And they were going to fly me, Cameron told me. And then the Columbia was lost. February 1st, 2003, the space shuttle Columbia disintegrates on reentry, taking with it 7 souls. Cameron went to their memorial service, but he never got to go to space. I guess this was after Titanic. He wanted to make a movie in space. And he goes, I asked what level of regret he had about this, the fact that he never went. 0, he said. Different life. The stuff I did instead was equally cool. Yeah, it would have been great. And I think if I had really put my mind to it, I could have manifested that a few years later with a better camera system and an even better plan. But see, by then I was into Avatar, and that was a whole other level of cool. So he can't be stopped. He can't be stopped.
I'd found something cooler than going to space. Fucking hey, man. Good for you.
I'm going to give thousands of people acute schizophrenia by immersing them in a world that they don't want to leave.
So yeah, I guess this is where I want to leave it today. It's James Cameron is everything people imagine Elon Musk to be, and I am to James Cameron what all of his reply guys are to him.
Yes, you got to serve somebody, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But make it somebody who's worth it.
You're not going to be trapped inside of a burning 4-hour space action movie and have to apologize for being trapped in it before he'll let you out.
Yes. The theater will not spontaneously explode when you go to see the Way to Water.
That's the James Cameron promise.
And like Elon has a fake engineering degree that he lied about. And it's very clear does not know how to code at all. Doesn't even understand what code is. He thinks code is just like the matrix, right? When you just see like numbers just like flickering on a computer screen. Whereas this article makes clear James Cameron on a film set, like people like at times don't like working for him or think he's a tyrant because he does understand how to do every single job on a film set, from like cinematography to lighting to fucking like a key grip to sound. Like he knows every single technical detail of every single aspect of the industrial production of movies and special effects as good as the guy whose job it is to do that on a set. And as a director, he says, like a lot of times as a director, you can just sort of sit there and be like, okay, like here's the vision, do that, do this, yes, no. But he really can run every single thing himself on a film set.
Which is probably a pretty scary workplace to be in that sense, because I feel like so much of any workplace is being able to get away with the fact that either your boss doesn't know exactly what you do or
Yeah.
doesn't care very much about it, and so is going to give you like either way you get like some leeway. But if you're like if James Cameron is like, I could be a better script supervisor than you, and you know that that's true. That's a fucking cold shot. That is not easy to bear.
You can't say, oh, like, no, this is the way I do it, or like, this is the way I learned to do it, like, or this is the better way. This will save us time or money. No, you got no margin for error whatsoever with this guy.
Right, because Cameron could be like, I invented this camera. Like, I realized that there wasn't a camera that did what I wanted it to do, so I had a guy come up with this, and I know exactly how it works, and you're not correct.
Well, there we go. I mean, after a long list of turkeys, God Emperor James Cameron, I think he's someone we could all and should be thankful for. And in fact, if you're not thankful for him, I think you should be disciplined by the state.
The time for you to get right with James Cameron is now, not after the release of Way of Water.